Hello and a very warm welcome indeed to this latest edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And my guest today is a woman who loves books and who loves style. What's more, she's made a very successful career and it seems a wonderful life out of combining the two. And here she is, Angelika Taschen. Thank you very much for joining us here today, Angelika, on Talking Germany.
Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. Lovely. Now, together with her former husband, Benedikt Taschen, Angelika was, for 2 decades, at the helm of the global publishing phenomenon called Taschen Books. More recently, Angelika has set up her own publishing house, Angelika Books, which is based right here in Berlin. But this very busy woman is involved in many other projects, and I'm sure she's going to be a fascinating guest. Angelika, I said there in my introduction, books and style are the two big things in your life. Is it fair to say they're the two big loves of your professional life?
Yes, I think I made out of my passion my profession. My big passion is art and architecture.
Yeah.
And somehow it goes into style when you are looking at a lot of beautiful things. You develop a certain style, I think.
I was going to ask you, because, I mean, books, we'll talk about books a lot later. We'll talk about, you know, it actually says on your website, Angelika has books in her genes. And I think that's true because of your family background, which we'll talk about. But let's just talk about style first. Your fascination with style, when did it really begin?
I would say very early, as a teenager already. I was quite aware what I want to have and what I don't want to wear. Yeah, and I had kind of fights with my mother. But it takes a time to develop your own style and to understand yourself, what is suitable to you and what corresponds with your ideas. Yeah.
Why is style? I mean, you know, some people would say we live in a world where there's, you know, the people are at war, people live in poverty. Style. Why is style important?
To me, I think it was Dostoevsky who said, "Beauty will save the world." I think beauty is something very high spiritually, and it's not such as only superficial thing. Yeah, so. And I think the more beautiful things you bring in the world, the more beautiful the world becomes. Even there is poverty and war and all the bad things. OK, you won that argument. Is style the same as fashion? Or is there a difference? No, style is a more broader thing. Fashion is something like from season to season. But also within fashion you can have style. But to have style is also about manners, about how you live, how you eat. To me, style is something much more bigger. And you've certainly got your own distinctive style, which I think is quite consistent. When I've sort of, you know, I've looked at lots of images of you this past week, of course. And I just wonder when because you always say it's very sort of spontaneous, your look. Yeah, I don't know whether I should believe that or not. When you got up this morning, you were thinking, oh, I'm going on Talking Germany with Mr. Craven. How much time did you spend sort of thinking about your look? Actually, I didn't think too much because I just was wearing what I was wearing the last few days and I was feeling comfortable in. Yeah? And I think this is the essential thing about having your own style, is to feel comfortable and not to feel your clothes. Yeah, I just want not to think about it. And then simplicity is a recipe. So the less you do, the more simple it is, the more comfortable I feel. OK. That's the message. You've had your first impressions there from Angelika Taschen. Here is more.
Paris 2008. Publisher Angelika Taschen was on a voyage of discovery, looking for showy apartments for an illustrated book for Taschen Publishing House. Now 54, she worked for Taschen for 24 years, first as an editor, later as managing editor. Taschen publishes a wide range of illustrated books, not only on art, design, and architecture, but also on sex and even cosmetic surgery. Together with Benedikt Taschen, who became her second husband, she made Taschen Books the world's largest illustrated book publishers. Angelika Taschen comes from a family of booksellers. She grew up in Cologne. At first, it looked as if she would break with family tradition. She trained as a classical ballet dancer, but she was too tall to be a prima ballerina. Instead, she studied art history and signed up with Taschen Books. After separating from Benedikt, she went her own way and founded her own small publishing house in Berlin. And today, she's our guest on Talking Germany, Angelika Taschen.
Some wonderful photos from your childhood days there, yeah? Angelika, I said at the beginning of the show, you've got books in your genes, yeah? You've got books in your DNA, and it's really true, because you come from a publishing family, and it goes back a long way.
Yeah. Actually, publishing is true. It was bookshop family. It was founded 1872 by my great-great-grandfather.
1872?
Yes,
yeah?
in Bonn. And it's still there, and my sister and me, we still own it, but we don't run it. And yeah, so I really come from, and in the beginning, I still have the founding document, and it says book shop and auction house, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And they were also, but it was before the Second World War, they were also publishing books.
OK, so you come from this publishing family, this family that had the bookshop, yeah? But you wanted to become a dancer.
Yes. Dancer or opera singer?
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Since I was 5, but for the opera, my voice, I found out, was not working. But I started studying ballet, and that was my really biggest passion.
There was a problem, though, and a problem that I'm not quite sure that, I mean, you know, pardon my ignorance, but you were too tall.
Yeah.
Yeah? What's the problem with being too tall?
Yeah, when you want to become, or I was trained becoming a classical ballet dancer, you cannot become so tall. It's 168 centimeters.
And how tall are you?
176.
Oh, yeah.
And because then you dance on your toes, you are even taller, and the men get only until here, and then they have to, exactly. And they have to, you know, there are a lot of, they have to carry you, and you are too heavy and too big, so forget it.
Interestingly, and today you're wearing high-heeled shoes. You very often do. Again, that's something that I've noticed. So you actually heighten your height.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy being a tall woman?
Finally, I started enjoying it. I was hating it until I was 25.
Yeah.
And then I started, OK, now you make the best out of it. And it has advantages. When you are in the room, you are a bit taller, you can see better, and it's a stronger presence in a way. And I think also, maybe it's a wrong impression, but sometimes they take you a bit more serious. OK. I'm taking you seriously. I want to talk about a serious subject, about Taschen Books. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it was a huge publishing success, we've seen. Just tell me a little bit about the formula. It was sort of, you took art books, you took art, architecture, design, 3 areas that had been sort of really in photography. They'd been part of the academic, the intellectual world, and you popularised them. And into the mix, you threw, to spice it all up, you threw in sex as well.
Yeah.
That was the formula, yeah?
Yeah, content-wise. But the success of the formula, I think, was the distribution we had. That we didn't sell foreign rights to other publishers, but we did everything by ourselves, also the distribution system. So we could make the print run higher and the retail price lower. And that was the big success, that you got great books with good content, well-done content for quite good price, because at that time art books were very expensive.
Exactly.
And nobody could afford them. And we tried to make them affordable also for students and younger people, and
And you succeeded, absolutely, because I mean, I was part of the sort of, you know, I was one of those people out there buying your books, and I would, you know, I'd pick them up and I'd think, these books are very affordable.
Yeah,
that was precisely what you're describing. Yeah,
thank you.
OK, so you went for you had a daughter while you were still studying. So you were a young single mum. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that shortly. Yeah, you went off to you got involved in Taschen Books. It was a very successful publishing business. You went to live in America, in Los Angeles. You went to live in a fascinating house. I think we've got. Let's just have a look. We've got a couple of photos from the house here in Los Angeles. And maybe you can tell us about the house, Angelika.
Yeah, it's a house built by John Lautner in 1961. And yeah, as you can see, it's standing only on one pillar. And you go in a little funicular up the hill, and then you enter through this bridge, the house. And it's quite unique, I would say.
Absolutely. It's a completely iconic building.
House, yes.
Yeah.
That's totally one
of
the most
so you were enjoying all the success. You were living in this amazing house in LA. Yeah, you knew everybody who was anybody. You had become, there's a word for what you had become. You had become a celebrity, I think, in a way. Yeah.
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 In a way, yeah. in a small world,
exactly.
I would say.
What did it do to you?
Yeah, I don't know. Other people would have to judge about this. It's not on me. But I tried to, or actually also because of my divorce and so on, I had to, how you call it, reinvent myself. And maybe it kept me on the ground. I hope that my friends tell me, my old friends, I still have friends from my teenage years, so they still recognize me.
That's always a very good thing, a very, very healthy thing to have that kind of anchor in the past, yeah. OK, after the Los Angeles phase, yeah, you then came to Berlin, you came to live in Berlin, and you set up Angelika Books, yeah?
A little later then, yeah. Then I came here, but...
Yeah, OK. And the interesting thing about Angelika Books is that it's described as a boutique publishing house. What is a boutique publishing house?
Yeah, I publish now only very few books in very small print runs. It's like a boutique hotels. They are not, in contrary to chain hotels, they have few rooms and are not like chain hotels. And I just do very few books in very small print runs.
We have one wonderful example here that you have brought along today, Angelika. Just tell us about this book here while I sort of, give the viewers the opportunity to just have a look. I'm going to open it to see what we find. Let's move along a little bit from that one.
Actually, we would also have an English and a French version. We're showing the German version. It's a cooperation with the famous perfume publisher. I didn't know that there is something like a perfume publisher too. Yeah. He invites the great noses, international famous perfume makers, to do perfumes for his Frederic Malle label. And it's a very interesting, and he comes from a perfume dynasty. Yeah. His grandfather founded Dior Perfumes. And it's also like in my case, it's in his genes, producing perfumes. And it was a very beautiful cooperation because I myself love fragrances. And I just think what he's doing is very necessary. It's like a boutique publishing. What I do, he does on the field of perfume, because we have all these mass market perfumes in the duty-free stores, like all the big fashion brands do, in my eyes, cheap smells. Yeah. And he's trying to do more precious and the old-fashioned way. Okay. It's
certainly a wonderful, wonderful book, and I'm really grateful to have got to know Frederic Malle, who was somebody who just hadn't been familiar to me before. Yeah. Berlin fashion. Yeah. I'll say one word. Yeah. Moulakstrasse. Yeah. Tell the world about Moulakstrasse.
Yeah. It became the last few years like the fashion street in Berlin of the little boutiques, little concept stores, but also Berlin labels like Lala, Berlin run their shops there. So you have one very idyllic street, actually. It's very nice walk. Yeah. You have like 10 little great fashion stores.
It's interesting because when I was thinking, I was looking through your book about Berlin street style, and it was talking about how Berlin fashion is very improvised, very pragmatic, very low key. And I thought Moulakstrasse, because I'd seen that in one interview with you, you had recommended Moulakstrasse as a place to go in Berlin, and I thought, when I go down Moulakstrasse, I see Berlin style in all these shops, and it looks to me like the clothes that I can remember people wearing in the late 1970s.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are paying, you know, for this sort of low-key Berlin fashion, people are paying hundreds of euros to look like in the 1970s, no?
No, I think it's always, as you know, in fashion, the 80s have a revival, the 60s, it's always about revivals.
Yeah.
But I think what you see is like really a Berlin style without any connections to any decades.
Oh, yeah.
I think they create something by themselves.
Okay.
And also because they do a lot, it's a lot of handcraft, and it's not like H&M and Zara. It's a lot like small little enterprises who do it, and then if you don't produce it in the form for how you say in the East and China and so on, it gets a little bit more expensive, but it's not as expensive as the very big brands.
In the report that we just saw, all the people who were wearing Berlin fashion were women. What about Berlin men?
Yeah, actually, I think there are also. We did the book for women, but we could do actually a book about the Berlin men. There is a certain fashion style here too. As you know, many wear beard now. And,
nearly everybody.
Yeah. And also, you know, sneakers is a big subject. You have to wear the right pair of sneakers. It's a kind of code, And they wear parkas. There is a certain style here for men too, yes. You could do a book about it actually too.
Okay, maybe another project for you there. When you left LA, you were sort of, I guess, and I'm sure it was the case, you were financially independent. You could have chosen to live anywhere in the world.
Yeah, but for me, this question was easy. Normally, I'm a bit like, oh, should I do this or that? When you have too many opportunities, it gets difficult. But in this case, for me, it was very easy. I wanted to come back to Germany, and there's only one city for me, Berlin. And I really feel, and it's 10 years now, I'm in the right time, in the right place. For me, like my Kundalini teacher from Los Angeles, she was just here, Yoga Kundalini.
I was going to ask you.
And she said in the beginning of her workshop, oh my God, the city is so ahead of everything. You have electric cars, everybody eats organic vegan food, you have homeopathy, everybody is into alternative healing and so on. And even people from Los Angeles find it here very ahead of the time. Very
even people from Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, because in this field, LA is ahead. Yeah.
Talking about being ahead, let's go back in time just a little bit. Can you remember, because you're talking about your relationship to Berlin, can you remember the time, I don't know, before the Berlin Wall?
Definitively. My grandmother was living here. And I remember my very first, at that time, it was not cheap flying, taking airplanes. I took an airplane from Cologne, Bonn to Berlin Tempelhof. So my very first airplane flight was to Berlin Tempelhof, which is a quite impressive airport. My grandmother.
It's a great piece of architecture.
Actually, yes. And I could feel it when I arrived at that time. My grandmother picked me up, and I remember this big, which is still there, the monument in front of it. And so my grandmother was living in the West, but she traveled with me. You had to buy this little visa. She showed me also the former East. We went to Alexanderplatz and so on. So I know Berlin. And then I was later hitchhiking to Berlin back and forth with my friends. I spent a lot of it. We went to the jungle.
The famous club?
Yes.
The famous club, yeah.
And
I went to the jungle as well.
We should have met. And I always was coming to Berlin since my teenage years. And I was always interested in the city.
40 years of Berlin history.
A bit, kind of, yeah.
Angelika, some very interested and talented women there. And we're talking about families and work, yeah? When we talk about families and work and we talk about it being difficult, it's always a problem for women and not a problem for men.
I think it's still today the case. Even it's maybe a little different time and getting a little better, the support for women who want to work. But I see it with my daughter. She has the same, not problem, but the same situation to have 2 children and to be a doctor in a hospital. And it's not easy. It's a lot of stress and to combine both things.
Is Germany?
But I think there is no other choice.
Is Germany a little bit old-fashioned there, perhaps? I mean, people always say that, you know, childcare in Germany, it's not really very well organised. We tend to assume sort of all too often that the woman will stay at home and look after the kids. Yeah.
I don't know it personally because, for example, with France, they always say the women have it much easier. The childcare is, the state public childcare is much better developed. And also, I think the French woman has more, but that's only what I read. But I think you read it so often that there must be something true about it. They have much more confidence to say, I give my child in very early age already to a kindergarten and I go to back to my regular work. Yeah. I think they have a longer time already doing it. The German woman is maybe not yet as used to this. There's always a conflict. I feel they have a conflict, that they have to make a decision. And for the French woman, it's more clear that they want to do both.
Interesting comment. So what about you? When I mean, you had one daughter, but there were other children running around in your life, I know. How did you... And you were working very hard with this global publishing empire. How did you combine those? You know?
Yeah, first of all, I had no choice. But I also think if I would have had a choice, I would not have been just a mother. Because I have I'm too curious and too many interests, and I like to work. I loved my work. It was my passion, and is my passion. And yeah, so I was lucky I could somehow do it. But I think it was for my daughter not easy. It was for me not easy. But in the end, it was somehow successful.
You made it work, yeah?
Yeah.
It's interesting that the women in our report are sort of moving into what you might call the second phase of their lives, in a way, yeah? And you said something interesting which I noted. You said, not too long ago, I used to be frightened that when you get to 50, you no longer count, neither in your career nor in the eyes of men, yeah? Has that changed your perception on that? Or... You said, you know, you were frightened of that.
Did I say this? Yeah, strange, yeah. Yeah, I think you don't need to be frightened to be, I can say now. I'm not sure if I really said this, but I think the times really have changed, because we get now, in former times, it was you die with 70, now you become 90. So you are in the middle of your life and not in the last part of your life because of our health care and all of this. And we know so much more about food and, I don't know, Ernährung. Nutrition. So we get much healthier, much older, with much more energy, and we can do so much more. And I think life only starts with 50.
Interesting. Talking about progress being made, in 2010, you were a founding member of the German branch of the International Women's Forum, yeah? What's that all about?
Yeah, and I'm also in another private circle of Women's Forum. The idea of this is to speed up the development which is there, that in higher positions women are reflecting what is the population. We are half-half. And when you look in the higher positions, it's 1/4 of women if you are lucky.
If you're very lucky.
If you are very lucky, and in certain fields not one. So we still have to work on this. And this is all has to do also with to support each other,
Networking.
Within the women. But men do very naturally. We women also, we have to learn more.
I suppose the big question, the big central question for somebody that I can ask somebody like you is, does German culture need to be protected from American business?
Yeah, I think we could learn from each other. It's not that one needs to protect, that's the wrong strategy, Because I think the Americans found a lot of good ways supporting culture, like the whole private funding, raising money for institutions. It works so well in the States. and we only have the state taking care of it. And there is a totally different culture between rich people in the States and here. And the other way around, maybe the Americans can learn from European or especially German culture, supporting culture, like, the book printing was invented in Germany, so I think it's a deeply rooted cultural good, a book. And the Americans don't have this deep roots. And so maybe they don't understand why we want to control book price and so on. So the exchange is what is good.
Interesting reflections. You talked about how good the Americans are through private foundations investing money in culture. What the Americans are also very good at is creating large companies, especially these days when we, in the report we heard about Facebook and Amazon and so on, and Google, of course. And we've talked about Berlin, and Berlin's often now viewed as a sort of a start-up city, yeah? And I wonder what your, because you call yourself a sort of a cultural entrepreneur, I know. Is there any sense that Berlin will be able to create a company on that scale? Or is the Berlin startup scene just a lot of trendy people sitting around in cafes?
No, I think Berlin has a potential, to develop something like that, because a lot of amazing international people gather here, come together, develop great ideas. But when these ideas, products in the internet, you can also call it product, become very successful, they are running away to other countries where they find politically, but also tax-wise, better conditions to grow, and to become like really big. Yeah. I think I'm not so into the details with laws, but I think there has to be a little change to enable these great startups with great ideas to grow faster and easier.
OK, interesting thoughts. But we're going to change the tone just a little bit, because we like to ask our guests to bring along cherished private possessions, and you have done so, Angelika. Wonderful. Yes. You've brought along, well, I'm going to use the German word, you brought along your Tässchen.
Yes.
Yeah. Your teacup and saucer.
Yes.
Yeah? Tell us why.
Since my teenage years, I drink every morning my cup of tea out of this teacup, which is from KPM. A Berlin KPM is Königliche Preußische Manufaktur.
The Royal Prussian Manufacturer.
Yes. Yeah. Founded by Friedrich dem Großen. And this decor is from, I think, 1760. And it's still, since then, I don't know how many years, 250 years in production. And I drink from a cup which was invented 250 years ago, and I still enjoy it every morning since many, many years.
And when did it actually come into your possession? How old were you when you first were given
I
this?
would say so when I was 13, 14, because my grandmother was collecting it already, and she was giving me some as a present, and then with each birthday, with each Christmas, I got one piece, and so it grew over the years, and I still buy it when something breaks, and I still enjoy it very much. I like the, how you call it, the saucer, especially.
It's a very high saucer.
Yeah. You know, I was told, but I'm not sure if this was the people, because the tea was so hot, they put here.
Have you tried it? Do you actually do it?
No, I don't do it. But I try to wait, and it makes sense, right?
It makes sense, absolutely. It's very lovely. This KPM stuff is very.
I love it, yeah.
Yep. The very early days of your fascination with design.
Yes.
Yeah? Angelika, we've just got a little bit of time for our quiz at the end of the show.
Yes.
Oh, I can hear the music. What do? I'm going to give you one question. Where are we more likely to find you? Tucked up in bed reading a book, or dancing the night away?
Finding me in the bed reading a book. Even I love dancing.
There we go. That's all the time we have with the stylish, with the bibliophile, trend-setting and charming Angelika Taschen. A great guest. If you've enjoyed her company as much as I have, then do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and tschüss.